that kind of thing. But again, is Christmas mixed up in this? And so Wes Huff has some things to say about it, and I thought it was really good. Some of the stuff that he said. Maybe I should start out with just letting him kind of talk about it himself from the very top of the whole thing. He reads a bunch of comments that he gets from people. Let's go.
Of a few modern Christian traditions, and boy, did I get a response. It's obviously pagan, and everybody who has a brain on their head knows it. You will be judged for your leading astray the flock from Yeshua Adonai Yahuwah to follow the great Shaitan Ra. A Christmas tree is an idol. You bring it sacrifices, hold hands around it to sing songs, and then bow down to it to get your presents. I've never seen a clearer example of pagan worship before. Jeremiah 10, 3-4 clearly forbids you to have a Christmas tree.
Okay, and so that's one of the things that one of the commenters wrote to him. And because again, he was asking the question and he got a response: is the Christmas tree pagan? Is Christmas pagan? And so he got a response. And obviously, this is one of the main things that we always hear. The Christmas tree is an idol, and you stand around it and you're sacrificing to it by holding hands and bowing down to the Christmas tree. And then he gives Jeremiah chapter 10, verse 3 through 4. Let's hear what else Wes has to say about this whole thing here, because obviously this person is spouting the same talking points.
You can try your best to say it doesn't, but what else could it be talk about? You just want to justify your sinful fleshly Christmas is pagan, and it comes from Babylonian pedophilia. It doesn't take a brang scientist to figure that one out. Yes, it is. You are going to held accountable for every single thing you teach that is wrong and can mislead the souls. You are telling people it's not pagan, a celebration that is rooted with Nimrod, Semiramis, and his son Tammuz. A pagan celebration to worship the sun god? Really? It's not about us and this worldly traditions. It's about the one and only Messiah and his name being honored, not just for Christmas, but in everything we do. And the always popular High Mass of Apollyon the Destroyer, filthy.
Listen, you...
Okay, so anyway, just kind of looking at this whole thing, we can see that in the example that they're given on this particular example, we are seeing people talk and say, well, basically the same thing, that is worshiping Nimrod. There is Tammuz and Samaria, and then of course all of the pagan the three pagan entities that are well known within the occult, right? And so they believe that this was part of the roots of Christmas, right? So as we hear this, it's kind of disturbing. Let me see if I can get past this commercial here, and let's see if we can get past this commercial, and then we can get back to what Wes was saying. But again, now Wes is going to come out and what he's going to say. Let me see if I can skip past this. This guy's got me going here. Let's see what Wes
pretty extreme comments, but I'm not kidding when I say there were over 100 negative comments, some that I just had to delete because they were just not appropriate. My DMs also got pretty crowded with people accusing me of being a wolf, false prophet, Satan lover, and so on and so forth. And the point...
Yeah, guys, I don't know why people have to be so mean, though. I mean, this whole thing about... That's probably one of the reasons I don't even drop it. I just continue. Once people get mean like that, I just continue to, begin to just kind of like talk about it. If it's just mean, it gets up under my craw, I'll just talk about it until If somebody's just getting that mean, it's kind of like a different spirit that's coming from people when that happens, right? And again, guys, like I said, don't mind me if I'm up late and it's past your bedtime. You go to bed. All I'm doing is just sitting here and I said I'm just going to go on and talk anyway because I'm going to repost it, and you'll be able to see it later. So go ahead and get some sleep, guys. But again, I'm going to repost it because I wanted to comment about this. I want to let people know the way I feel about it. I don't get the same spirit that you get when you are in church or with other believers or holding hands with other people of faith. I don't get that same spirit when you're smiling at a person and that kind of thing. That is a true believer. I don't get the same kind of spirit when I think about Jesus. I don't see Jesus rejecting me like some of the other people have come to reject you. As a matter of fact, they use profanity. This is what Wes Huff was saying. He said, shoot, when I started talking about this, he said some of the comments were so mean that he had to remove the comments from his DM, and that's pretty bad. I mean, when you get to be that nasty, then there's a different spirit at work here, right? And so it just, I don't know why people get so upset about you examining something that if you're settled in the truth, then you should not be angry. Kind of like Billy Carson, all right? He got downright mad when he was exposed, and it just seems like the same thing is happening here.
The point of this video is not to focus on the crazy, although there's a lot of that to go around. My purpose is to try and correct some of the misinformation and misunderstanding surrounding this particular topic. Misinformation that I myself believed before, misunderstandings that I myself was ignorant on because I hadn't looked at the source material on the subject.
Okay, so right. And so again, it's almost like no one wants you to look at the source material. They want you to just accept what they're saying about the whole thing. Okay, so one person gets off the internet that it's a celebration of Saturnalia and Saturn. And then another person hears that also it was a celebration of Nimrod. And then another person gets another soundbite from somebody else and tells them that it was, something deep into the Yule and the Yuletide season being from the origins of the Norse people and, all of the traditions there. And we do know that a lot of these traditions were mixed in with the church, but it just we don't get to the source material, right? Where is this coming from? Where's all of this coming from? And that's what I like about what Wes does, is that Wes will research a topic until, he gets to the source materials. Let's go. Let's hear it.
Let's start off with some of the most common accusations and objections I see. The first, and probably the most talked about, is the date of Christmas itself. It's often asserted that the date of December 25th was already a common one used in ancient Near East and Greco-Roman world. The Christians merely scheduled their celebrations of Jesus' birth on the same day as these pagan festivals to somehow make it easier for pagans or early converts to convert or start to celebrate Christmas. Apart from the fact that I wouldn't even have that big of an issue with this concept if it was true, when you really dig into the sources on what these festivals were when they happened, the argument starts to fall apart. The leading contender for this argument is the Roman festival of Sol Invictus, the festival of the unconquered sun. It's not until the middle of the 4th century that anyone makes the connection of Sol Invictus to December 25th, and earlier inscriptions are inconsistent, placing Sol Invictus throughout August, October, and early December.
Yeah, so, all right. All right, so he's saying that it wasn't until the 4th century that they made the connection between, Christmas and Sol Invictus, and Sol being the sun and the worship of the sun and that kind of thing. And so you're trying to make a connection that didn't originally originate like that. Now the connection is made. How many years, how many centuries later? 2024, right? So 2,000 years later, we're making connections that weren't originally made in the very beginning of all of this whole thing. So basically, there was no connection between Christmas and the worship of the sun. They were two separate things. Now, I know there's some people going to say, no, they were together. So let's continue. I'm sorry.
Christians, on the other hand, had already pinpointed December 25th as the date they thought Jesus was born, decades before any of this. I'll go into more detail in a little bit as to the reasons behind all of that, but Sextus Julius Africanus in the late 2nd and early 3rd century had already made that conclusion, and we have some early evidence that Christians were acknowledging it as such. In reality, Roman temple worship was on the decline by the 4th century, and it is just as possible and even more probable that the pagans moved their celebrations to December 25th to compete with the Christians who were...
Okay, so that's an interesting thought. Most people think that Christianity came from the Romans, and now Wes is saying that the Christianity or the Romans were trying to move their celebrations to the Christmas festivals or whatever the Christmas celebration was, maybe even to compete with the Christians in the fact that, they wanted to make sure that the Roman Empire and the paganism that they practiced in Rome continued. And this was one of the things that they were doing. They used, they used the Christians to try to win them back or win Christians back to the Roman way of doing things. Because by the time Jesus came, of course, the gospel of the kingdom was such a change in the way things were being done. I mean, can you imagine like what happened in the early church? And we can talk about that. The early church had such an impact on the world that it was said of the disciples that they were the men who turned the world upside down. In other words, Christianity had such an impact. It had such an impact on the world that it was actually destroying or breaking down or creating a new kind of world. That these people were pagans, and now they were giving up their pagan faith because of Christianity. Remember, I don't know if you guys remember the story in the Bible about how Paul went into a city. And when he went into a city, he began to preach Jesus, and that's all he did. And the people in the city who were of Athens got so angry because the people stopped worshiping idols and turned to Jesus. And when they did, this kind of thing actually caused them to say, these men have come into our city and they preach Jesus, and they've turned the world upside down. That's amazing. So Christianity actually breaks down any pagan religion as soon as it comes. As soon as you bring the light of Christ to anything, the devil's got to flee. I mean, have you ever tried to walk into a room that was dark and there was light on the outside of the room, and keep the light from coming into the room with you when you walk in? You know, no matter how hard you try, if the room is dark and you open the door and there's light in the hallway and you open the door to a room that's dark, the light will follow you in. This is what happens with Christianity. When Christianity came, the floodlights of God turned on to a dark world, and it began to expose and eliminate and, cause all of the darkness to leave. So paganism was actually being destroyed by the advent of Christianity. It could be that, again, they moved their religious practices to December 25th to actually copycat the Christians rather than the Christians copying them. Then that's one of the things Wes Huff is uncovering here. Let's go on.
For a growing religious majority at the time. In fact, Pliny the Younger in the early 2nd century had already noted, potentially a little bit hyperbolically, that the Roman temples were being forsaken due to so many Christian converts. And Emperor...
Wow. Is that amazing? Yeah. And that's amazing because, again, so many Christian converts were happening that these Romans were trying to bring people back. Now, again, that's probably why we have the advent of the Roman Catholic Church, because the Roman Catholic Church is an attempt to get idol worship mixed with Christianity. And again, you know what happened with the Protestant movement. The Protestant movement moved away from the Roman Catholic Church because of their contamination. They were being contaminated by the Roman people. But again, that didn't happen until much later. These people were having a problem holding on to their pagan religion is because they were having so many converts to Christianity.
Emperor Julian, who was emperor for 3 years in the 4th century, grew frustrated with the lack of Roman religious devotion to idols in his time and blames the Christians specifically for this pagan crisis of faith.
Wow. Is that something? Have you ever heard that? Yeah, Bob, you say you never heard that before. Yeah, and Betty Blevins, how you doing? It's good to see you tonight. Go ahead and get you guys, go ahead and get some sleep. But again, I'm just on because I said I was going to maybe repost this, and I wanted to repost it later on, but that's the reason I'm doing it tonight, because I'm going to be going tomorrow anyway. But I wanted to cover this topic, kind of like to do some justice to it. And Wes Huff, when he got to talking about it, and he goes into the history of the Romans and the main people that we were talking about that supposedly we're celebrating when we celebrate December 25th and Jesus' birth. They're saying that most people say that we're actually celebrating the Roman holiday, which is not really the truth, because again, the emperors are saying, no, Christianity was actually destroying and getting rid of the Roman holidays. And so apparently these Romans, they on a last ditch effort, they moved their holiday to the 25th. It's more likely. That's what Wes Huff is saying. It's more likely that happened. You guys do some research, find out,
In his work, The Origins of the Liturgical Year, historian Thomas Taylor says this exact thing when he states that it is more likely the Roman Emperor Aurelian placed Sol Invictus on December 25th to compete with the growing rate of Christianity.
Wow, that's amazing. So we got all of this, coming after Christianity, and again, Christianity, just interrupted the kingdom of darkness, right? That's what Christianity did. Christianity interrupts. As a matter of fact, Christianity just destroys Satan. Christ is king. He's greater than Satan. And so this is, again, this is what the researcher here is saying.
December 25th being the date of the Feast of Saturnalia, the Roman pagan festival honoring the agricultural god Saturn. However, much like Sol Invictus, our earliest sources for Saturnalia come late. Macrobius in the 5th century says that Saturnalia was celebrated 14 days before January, and keep in mind that the ancient Roman calendar at this time had 2 more days in their month of December than ours does today. This only comes out then to December 17th. Vermalia, although multi-day festival in ancient Rome devoted to Saturn and Kronos, comes in as a potential candidate. But Vermalia starts in late November and ends on December 17th.
Okay, so it ends on December 17th. Okay, so we have the Greek festival, we have the Roman festival, and both of them are possibly orgies and all kinds of other devilish things are going on. And what he's saying, what Wes is saying, and again, as we think about this as a historian, he's saying this occurred in the 5th century. Now, again, Christianity was already happening long before this, and the celebration of Christ's birth was happening also, according to church history, long before these people put these